Well, good afternoon, or actually late good morning. Many of you are probably a bit surprised. I hope you got the word Friday about our closure of the science building. The purpose of this morning's meeting is to brief you on what we know, and clearly I hope you're aware that, as you'll hear from the experts, that there's a lot we don't know. And you'll be briefed on a timeline and how we hope to at least resolve this. You're all aware that we've sealed off the science building. You have heard me often say to you that of all the priorities this campus and this president has is campus safety, the safety of our employees, and that we have environments where all of us can conduct our work without fear and without concerns. As you all know, and you've heard me say often, one of the interesting lessons I'm learning here at San Francisco State over 16, 17 months now is the unusual mixture of buildings from the library, state-of-the-art, to the science building, the gym, and this building, which were built in 51 or 2. All three buildings were designed for a campus of 5,000. And so, as you can see, when you have old facilities, we are, as you are aware, and the purpose of today is that we want to keep them in good working shape for all of you to do your work. So I'm going to be very brief. Today is about briefing you on what we know and some of the issues, questions, and timelines. And I'll leave it at that. We're going to leave some room at the end for any questions that you have about that building. So we'll go from there. So leading off, what we're going to do is have Michael Martin give you an update on how we got here and a status. We'll go to Chip Prokop, who is is the testing contractor for the building. He will take you through his procedures at the current time, and then Dr. Dralsa Smith will talk about an overview of the potential health hazards, et cetera. I hope that, and I know that all of you are inconvenienced, so the sentence I was going to use is probably very inappropriate. But I hope you understand our reaction to close the building motivated entirely out of your safety. When it was brought to us Friday afternoon, actually late last week, it was very obvious that, at least as I usually do, I sort of picture myself with an office in the building. I would expect my employer, the people around me, to make sure that safety ruled, and that what's motivated our decision to close and seal the building immediately, pending a lot of things that you'll hear about from the pros. So let's get to them, and then we will close with some questions and answers that you might have. Okay? So Michael?
Thank you very much for coming today. My name, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Michael Martin. I'm serving you in a dual capacity right now as your Human Resources AVP interim while we go through a recruitment on that, a search on that, and also the AVP with regards to safety and risk management. The safety division reports to me. It's my responsibility to keep you safe in your work and to help you in terms of continuing operations, maintaining continuing operations and business continuity. I'd like to first acknowledge that it weighs heavy on everybody's hearts who's working on this right now, the degree to which and the level of work that is going on in the science building right now in terms of your projects, your research. This is very personal to me because I know many of the faculty members who do work and have their work ongoing in the science building, and I'm treating it as if it's my own on that level. I really am. I want to assure you of that. How did we end up where we are? Well, as a part, being a research institution, We deal with hazardous chemicals and hazardous materials. And our safety group has developed a process to review the location of hazardous waste from time to time in order to ensure that we are appropriately addressing hazardous waste. Sometimes I think we encounter waste where we wouldn't expect to find it being stored perhaps temporarily by employees as part of a project or something, and what we do is we offer our services to remove the waste that shouldn't be on the campus. So it was in the process of that review that our safety group came into contact and encountered a setup in the basement of the science building, which appeared to be like a developing photo lab. And it looked old, it looked like it had been established. And so they sought information about who that belonged to because just of the nature of the kind of chemicals that can be involved with the photo process. When they found out the owners of the process, they dialogued with the owners of the process, and from the information that they were able to receive, they determined that it would be appropriate to do some chemical testing, do some testing down in the basement. So the safety team, our SF State colleagues, went down into the basement and with a contractor to do testing, safety testing in the basement because of its use, its ongoing use, and because of the knowledge around the photochemicals and stuff. It was during that testing that they encountered the presence of mercury down there, not contained, uncontained mercury. Mercury is heavier than air, so it settles, so they found it on the floor of the basement. Which they shouldn't have found it. They found it in a limited area or two, and it's a hazard because although it's heavier than air and it sinks, it can be disturbed. It's close enough in the weight to air so it can be disturbed. So immediately what they did is they locked that space down right away to make sure that nobody would go into the basement of the science building. They notified the appropriate colleges of what they did, placed appropriate signage, and put it on a key system that nobody else had the key to. Based upon that and other information that they had learned in researching about the basement, they proceeded to do, and in an abundance of caution, proceeded to go upstairs and to start testing some areas upstairs, including lab stockroom, chemistry lab stockroom. That testing occurred recently. During the holiday break, they did that testing, and when the results came back from that, they came back such that we learned of 7 spaces, 7 rooms that we felt needed to be locked down immediately in order to prevent further contact with things that are in too high, too excessive a level. So we locked down 7 rooms right then and there, changed them once again to a key that nobody had. We were in dialogue with the college when we did this, put up signs, and some of those rooms have a big impact on the operations. And that right there is, I think, where it really came personally to me on this is to remind me about my colleagues out there doing research on their projects, how important this is, these spaces. Based upon that, we continued to, we decided that it would be appropriate to continue testing of the balance of the science building. And so we were faced with the decision at this point. You know, we received testing results which indicated that 8 rooms, 7 rooms in the basement, should be locked to people until they could be cleaned. And so faced with a situation where we would either permit partial access to the rest of the science building while we conducted our testing and awaited those testing results, or completely closing the science building in order to keep from perhaps maybe moving things around unnecessarily or inadvertently, to perhaps making the situation worse or allowing people to come into contact things that they shouldn't. And also, though, that would slow down the whole cleaning process of the spaces we need to be cleaned. We closed the whole building. We did that because we're not giving up on opening that building by Monday, the 27th. I have not given up on that. My directive has been to get that building cleaned, ensure that its safety is ensured for all of you, to make sure we have the right experts on board to do that. So we chose option 2. We chose to close the whole building. There are no winter session classes in there right now. But believe you me, I know that this is a huge impact on projects. It will permit us, though, to keep from perhaps making the problem worse, perhaps having people come into contact with things that they shouldn't. And it's enabling the cleanup team to get into the chem labs and clean already. They've already cleared out one chem lab already this weekend. They began work around midnight or just before midnight this last Friday. And they're continuing to work to clean the areas that they can and to build containments and such to make sure that they don't spread a problem around. In the meanwhile, as Chip Prokop, who's the principal of AWS, which is Air and Water Sciences, they are an industrial hygiene firm, highly recommended by our 2 insurance companies that we're working with on this. He'll speak to the process by which he completed testing of the building this weekend, the process by which we should start receiving results back for the rest of the building this week, and we should have more that we can share with you next week in terms of that. In the meanwhile, the colleges have attempted to provide appropriate alternative workspace and assignments for people who are displaced as a result of the building closure. Whatever assignments you've been given up until now of this day, I'm sure there's a lot of organizing and reorganizing going on. Let me assure you that you all will play a part in bringing this building back up online and in the plans and what we can do to protect and preserve the items that are in the science building and ensure as best we can continuity of operations for that research and the work that's going on in there, the personal work that's going on in there. At this point, I think that's my contribution to it. To have Chip Prokop come up and talk to you about the testing methodology and to have you understand his competence and have the same confidence in him that we have and our insurance groups have. And then Alistair will speak a little bit about 2 potential health impacts, what we are trying to avoid by avoiding unnecessary contact with the items in that building right now that we're having cleaned. And then we'd like to hear your questions and be able to answer them. Okay? Great, thank you. Chip?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chip Prokop. I'm the president of Air and Water Sciences. We're an independent consulting firm located in Petaluma. We were requested to come down because of some of the concerns that Michael just described, to come down and take a look at some of the potential hazards within the building. They knew that there had been a problem in the basement, and there were some questions. Many of you know that there are certain archaeological artifacts in the building. They knew that these items were treated with certain chemicals, and they were looking to see if, well, are these present elsewhere within the building, and are there other hazards that we want to look at? We first did a screening of the building for volatile organic chemicals using a handheld instrument for mercury vapors and also for radiation. There had been some description that there may have been materials in the building at some point. Let me assure you that we found no levels of radiation that would indicate that. They were actually very low, so we have no indication that there were radioactive materials in the building at any time. Mercury vapors were the only high concentration we found was this one area within the crawl space of the basement. There were no elevated levels in the ambient air within the building. There were a couple areas in sink drains, a piping trench, but nothing in the ambient air of the building at all. So volatile organic chemicals, mercury, and radiation, all of them look fine for occupancy of the building for those items. We were also asked to look at the presence of building materials and any deterioration that we saw for either lead-based paint or for asbestos materials. We did find quite a few areas which concerned us. And so based upon that, that's when we decided to essentially shut the building the other day in order that we could do very thorough testing and also understand where, okay, if there are some materials that are deteriorated, where are they? And how can we allow access again so that we're not going to cross-contaminate something by, if there is one area that's a problem, how do we get into other areas to get out the clean materials? If you clean a building like this, you really only want to do it once. So we want to be efficient about it, we want to be safe about it, and so that's how we're approaching the project. We went through this weekend, took samples essentially from pretty much all areas of the building so that we can really characterize it, understand if there are concerns in certain areas and what to do about them. And we are awaiting results. That's where we are. Thank you.
Could you speak for just a moment, Chip? I'm sorry. Could you speak for just a moment on the process by which ultimately you actually assure the safety of the building before you clear it for the occupancy, reoccupancy?
All right. Thank you. Essentially, what we want to do is, once we do understand if there are problems in certain areas, we essentially set up a protocol for the decontamination of that area, and then we also, before anyone is allowed back in, the area is screened off, it has plasticized walls, negative air, so we really control the flow of the work and also protect the workers who are in there. Before that area is essentially cleared for reoccupancy, testing is done to, either both air and surface testing will be done to really demonstrate that it's okay to be in that area once again. So no areas will be allowed reoccupancy if they're dirty until that process happens. So unfortunately it takes a little time, but we're working with EH&S in particular to really get the process going as quickly as we can. Thank you. Alistair Smith, Director of Student Health Services.
Well, good morning. Yes, I'm Alistair Smith. I'm a physician and Director of Student Health Services here on campus. Although this is not part of the talk, but whilst I've got you all here, just in case any of you have not had your flu shot, please get your flu shot. Obviously, when people hear that they may have been in contact with increased levels of chemicals, it's very natural to be concerned about your health, and especially if people are pregnant or breastfeeding, what could the impact be on their children or potential children. So it's very reasonable that people will have these concerns. One of the things to say is that all of the chemicals and everything that's been discussed are actually in the normal environment every day. These chemicals have been around for millennia, and the human and mankind has evolved to be able to deal with them. Some of us deal with them more efficiently than others, and it depends on age and sex, whether we have underlying disease, et cetera, et cetera. But for most people exposed or coming into contact with chemicals, we have barriers that prevent them getting into our body, and then if they do get into our body, we have metabolic processes to get them out of our body again. So we can deal with them most of the time. And if any of you were to go to your doctor and say, I might have been exposed to lead, the first thing that they would tell you is, well, don't get exposed to it anymore. And so that's what this process has been about, is making sure that when we're uncertain about what the levels are in areas, using precautionary measures to have you excluded from that area until we make sure it is safe. Because the main thing to do if you have had an increased contact with these things is just to let your body deal with it itself, which your body does most of the time quite well. But as I say, if any of you do have serious underlying diseases, you may want to, especially when we get the results back, go and discuss these with your personal physician, especially if, as say, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you may want to discuss issues with your doctor. Again, if you're very concerned or these have caused you to be anxious or whatever, I just want to remind you that the university does have an employee assistance program, and that is available via the HR website, and they have a telephone number there. Obviously, you can also contact any healthcare provider you have yourself, and just in case you don't, Dorothea DeVal there of Counseling and Psychological Services, there are services available here on campus as well. So what I would say is at this moment in time, there's very little to tell you about medically because we don't have the information back from the industrial hygienists. Hopefully the information they bring back to us will be reassuring and no action whatsoever will be required medically of any of you. And I think the thing I would do at the moment is just, you know, as I say, have your flu vaccine, eat well, and exercise. Thank you.
I was expecting him to give a list of probably 10 other inoculations that... let me tell you what I've asked the EOC, the academic leadership, and my office to start preparing ASAP. I was briefed on the situation Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. That's when we made a decision to seal off the building, notify people, and try to get word to occupants prior to leaving it at the end of the workday on Friday. And we certainly knew that people you know, were not present, you know, researchers, others that have activity in the building. And so I'm going to tell you that there are three things on our, I'm sorry, 2 plans and 1 dream. So in essence, 3 options that we're looking at now. As you heard, our effort to make sure that the building is entirely safe so that we could begin the semester on the 27th in the building is our top priority right now. And as you heard from all 3 gentlemen, that call to start classes and activities then will depend upon the results of the testing, the data, and our confidence that we're absolutely sure that it's good to go back into that, fine to go back into that building. Plan B, I asked the EOC and the academic team is to begin planning for the closure of the building for the entire semester. Many of you have heard me say this, some of you have not, but I'm the type of guy, and I attribute it, even though I was raised in the Bay Area, to my Midwestern life for the last 20 years. It's better to have a plan and not need it than to need one and not have one. And so I've asked the academic leadership, Dean Axler and others, John Kim, the provost, by the way, who's ill today, otherwise she would have been here, to begin some very serious planning about what we do with the contingency that we would close the building for the remainder of this semester. Don't quote me on these. I understand it's probably about 2,000 plus students, probably in the neighborhood of 150 to 180 classes, ongoing research. I know that faculty members have grants from federal agencies. Obviously, we will work with you to notify whatever agency is out there that we have this situation that cannot be avoided. My understanding with a lot of the federal funding agencies is that they're very tolerant. I was very close to the Dillard people during the hurricane that took down 2 universities, 3 medical centers in New Orleans, and the government agencies were extremely tolerant and supportive. So I can't imagine them changing despite sequestration and all those other strange things that happen. So we will obviously open up those lines of communication if you let us know. The dream, when I briefed the chancellor Friday night and Saturday morning, I was probably pretty deliberate, and it's good that he's a science guy, because I shared with him that the building was built somewhere in the early 50s for a campus of 5,000. By the way, I think we did take him on the tour of that building when he came, because I wanted to show him the good, the bad, and the ugly. Being a science guy, he saw right away what was happening. And I told him quite bluntly that regardless of what happens, I need a new science building. So he'll know that I will be chewing on him from this day onward to see if that's a possibility or a reality that we can make happen. But obviously, we don't want to have a new science building and confront the option of closing the building for 2.5 years. I wasn't here when we moved the library over to Annex 1 and 2. I heard that was good for people's health because it made people walk back and forth across campus. But we adjusted, and I guess that's the strength of this community, is that in the face of those kinds of contingencies, we've been very adaptable, and tolerant, and very successful. Again, all of this is motivated by our commitment to making sure that the work environment for all of you, all of us, the students, the community that would inhabit the building, are walking into a safe building. And that's behind it. So I wanted to share with you plans A, plans B, and then obviously my own work with the chancellor as well. So that's where we're headed. I don't need to ramble in front of you. I know that many of you might have questions. Let's go to that right now. We have some microphones up here. Please feel free. Very back, go ahead.
Have all the rooms in the building been tested?
See, I didn't hear the last part.
Have all the rooms in the building been tested for contaminants?
I would say about 95% of the rooms, yes.
Will they all be?
You know, the only ones we left out were a few janitor closets, essentially. So essentially, we've tested the whole building.
Yeah, classrooms and offices were a must. So. Yes, sir.
Hello, is this on? My name's Frank Bayless. I'm a biology professor. And I've been in this building since 1975. So I'm speaking for myself and some of the people that work for me in my office. I appreciate that you are giving us some information, but it's not very specific. So the fact that you're not picking up mercury vapors other than a few locations, that's useful. Mentioning lead and asbestos is another issue. And we need transparency. Dr. Alistair said, you know, we all are exposed to this all the time. Well, that's true, but I need to know concentrations. And if I've been exposed to asbestos for 35 years or so in the building, I need to know that because it's a long-term disease before you see symptoms. All these questions have come up to me from the people that work for me, and I want them to know what levels you find and where you find them. That's important for us to advocate for ourselves and our health. So it's really important that we get the details when you get the details. And I know there's no ill intention here, but it's really important. I'm going to be asked these questions over and over again until we know. And there are people that have said, I'm going to OSHA and I'm going to do these things, you know. So we need to know, for instance, that if you think that you've been exposed to asbestos over a long period of time, that you should go have a chest x-ray, because you can actually do something about an early asbestos locus in your lungs. You can't after a certain period of time. So please give us all the information and respond to who are we to ask questions specifically to? The HR vice president? Is that where do our questions go?
You know,
Not the go ahead.
yeah, I want to give you my office, Michael Martin's office. We will make sure that the medical questions and the technical questions get to the right people, and we will get back to you.
So with all due respect, I appreciate that you're the director of the health center, but you're not an expert in these areas, and I would like to have a medical expert involved in this as well, because it is a specialty.
Sure.
I have had some experience in occupational health, and But what I did over the weekend is I've been speaking with San Francisco Public Health Department, and we have referred on, and they will be getting the results of these testing, which will be going to their experts in lead and asbestos, etc. And as you say, the dose makes the poison, and it's very important to know, the dose, the length of time, exposure, etc., etc. And definitely we will want to give you that information so that you can make appropriate.
So what I would not like to see is this go to OSHA and causing levels of complexity. That's why I think it's really important that we take care of it and do it well here. Mm-hmm. Credibility is essential. Thanks.
We hear you. Thank you. Very, very, very good point.
Mark Griffin, anthropology. My lab was one of the first labs to be closed, Science 395. And as I've communicated with Michael, we have over 1,000 skeletons from Santa Clara Valley Medical Center that are on loan. The facilities manager has been calling me over the entire weekend wanting to know the extent of contamination of the skeletons, because they will have to be returned and we have to let them know exactly what they've been exposed to. So we need to have actual numbers, levels of contamination, what the potential contamination is. We need to have all of those numbers and all of that data. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, we have ongoing projects that have to be completed within the next 2 weeks or we lose the contracts. So we need to have facilities. I've been calling, I've been emailing, and I'm disappointed to say I've heard nothing. I've had no replies, I've had no information, I have no idea where I'm going to be doing work or if I'm going to be doing work. So I need to know when this is going to happen, who's responsible for getting us rooms, and where we're going to be doing our work for the next few weeks. Researchers don't stop their research just because it's intercession.
We're very aware of that. We're still, from I won't speak for Michael, we're still trying to take a look. Obviously, we're waiting for the data as the testing is ongoing throughout the weekend. And then we'll confront contingencies such as returning artifacts, returning skeletons, making sure that we just don't move a contaminated area to another campus, another facility, et cetera. We will be working through those options as well.
We need to have specific numbers, though. Not a general statement, not a statement of, well, we don't think they were contaminated. We need actual data, actual numbers, actual indications that the boxes that the skeletons were stored in have been tested, that there's no chemical traces, that there's no contamination. Because if I return and say, well, we don't think they were contaminated, there's going to be testing done at the hospital and it's going to come back.
Yeah, we will not be that sloppy.
So we need to actually have the numbers in our hands.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just take that if I could just, we specifically have been discussing the skeletons in your project in our EOC, our Emergency Operations Committee. And we will be meeting again about those skeletons and the artifacts that are in there later today. Susan Shumenov is going to sit down and we're going to meet about some of that. And so I'd like to assure you that since you brought that to our attention, it's actually one of the top 3 things as far as continuity of operations. It's one of our top 3 priorities for that building is that project and those skeletons.
I'll just talk to you here. I'd like to request that you make provision for in those areas of the building that have not been determined already to be contaminated, to permit someone from the organizations, for the departments, to go back into the areas to get key equipment that they can take out. For instance, I have a computer that has key files that exist nowhere else. I can work if that computer is taken out. I have another piece of equipment that I need to ship to somebody. If I can take that out, I'm fine. But right now, for 2 weeks, this is the impossible situation. So I would like to request that you develop a plan that will allow people to go into the areas that have not already been determined to be contaminated. It could be an hour or half hour maybe even, to remove that equipment that is essential for us to keep functioning.
We deal with that.
I can say, I can speak to this and say that we have had other sizable losses on the campus before in terms of water losses, and we do allow people access as soon as a space can be determined safe for them to get access to remove personal items and to work with IT and with them about getting computers out. The difference between this and the water loss is we need the testing results first to understand what kind of conditions we're going into to retrieve those items, but it is a top priority to get critical equipment and items identified, get them cleaned as necessary, and get them out of the building for you.
But you already know that the key problem of issues like mercury are limited. And the other issues you're looking at right now, the ones about asbestos and paint, are general problems. And it seems to me that simply allowing people to go in for a very limited period of time to remove a computer so they can work from home, or to use some other piece of equipment that is clearly in a room that is not subject to this serious chemical exposure, seems to me to be pretty short-sighted. I'm sorry to have to be blunt about it.
Yeah, the experts, we've consulted a number of experts, not only CHIP, but also we have another IH firm that works with our hazardous waste removal company. And we have other resources too. They advise us that moving through the space could just make the problems worse. And while I hope everything that you say bears out to be true, and we can open sections to get fluid access to personal items out, we will ensure, we will get you access to that. It's just the conditions under which we do that to not make the problem worse and to not slow down the possibility of opening the building, reopening it on the 27th, which I have not given up on. And I've been directed to do, and I'm going to try to do that.
And if I may add, the analysis that of the testing that we've done over the weekend does include essentially more than just lead and asbestos throughout the building. And so we're waiting to really be able to understand where the problems are so that we can walk through the building without contaminating things. So we don't have those results in yet. They should be coming in within the next few days. We're going to be summarizing them as quickly as we can so that we can make this possible. We do understand people need their belongings and their research and equipment. We want to make sure that it's done properly and safely and that you are given material that's not contaminated.
So then what you're saying is that once you get these results back, you will develop a plan that will allow people, to the extent that it's possible, without contaminating the rest of the building, to go in and to retrieve this type of equipment.
That has been our practice with past losses, yeah. That is what we do because I'm your risk manager. I'm responsible for your safety function. That means I'm helping you with your operations to try to keep them as continuous as possible while ensuring the safety of your people and the continuity of the overall operations.
Thank you.
Very back.
Yes, I have, my question is in this part. I want to know why custodial closet was not tested. Is there evidence for that?
A number of them were. It really depends upon what we thought the concerns were. So they were tested, just not every single nook and cranny of the entire building was tested. But we tested many. I mean, we're taking wipe samples essentially. So you can't wipe every surface of every square inch of the building. We've tested, we've taken over 300 tests from throughout the building.
Okay, the other question I have, custodial staff are not limited to one part of the building. They clean the entire building and they go throughout the building. So I would like to know, once the tests come back, what are the consequences that have been exposed to anything and to get some direction.
Okay. I will tell you that every space was monitored for volatile organic chemicals and for mercury. And we found no levels in any spaces that the breathing space was above any levels of concern. So every single area of the building was tested.
There's a hand over here.
many of the equipment that are in the lab spaces are kind of a specialized equipment, and for an expert company like yours, you wouldn't know what they are and how to deal with them. I know that you do general testing. So my question is, will you be calling on any of the faculty or technicians who are associated with those buildings to ask questions, come and help, and all that?
Oh, absolutely. That's what I meant when I said you're all going to be really busy with this as soon as you get settled into an alternative workspace. Because we have a laser device suspended from a ceiling. We have all kinds of specialized equipment in there, and we need your help. We will need your help. We've taken tests. We'll get the results back once we find the conditions under which we can re-enter to gather personal items and to work with the items. We will be approaching the faculty and the staff of the impacted departments for your help. Please, we need your help. We will.
And also, I want to emphasize that the issue of data and computers that we have there, that I have a project that 6 or 8 people work on, and there's a server there that has been shut down. So none of these people can do any work right now. So I'm hoping that there will be some priority with respect to taking as soon as you can, that we can get into the place and clear those type of equipment and systems.
That's a very good point. It's one reason why Dean Axler is here, the provost has been involved, because one of our fundamental questions really is what activity is going on in that building. You know, what equipment, the research, issues, implications, et cetera. Your comment is well taken. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make sure that we're actually testing. We've had a chance to speculate over the weekend about what might be wrong, and we came up with a long list, including mold, asbestos, lead paint. I'd like to make sure that we're going to know that these also are not problems when the testing is finished. And then my other concern is, how did we get ourselves into this fix? Is it 50 years of deferred maintenance on that building? How many other of our buildings are involved? The rest of science is in buildings that are not much younger than the old science building. And my nose has been sniveling since I walked into this room even. So I'm concerned about the rest of the campus and how we're going to make sure that going forward, this doesn't keep happening.
That's why I alerted the Chancellor that there is an option C that he can't put off. And again, it's good that he's a science guy, because he'll want the same data that many of you have been asking for as we move forward. Yes, sir.
Yeah, besides the fact that I've been in that building for over 20 years, and the fact that there has been literature written about mercury poisoning in the past, specifically with material collections there that have been actually published, I really want to direct this to Chip in terms, we talked about decontamination of space. What about decontamination of materials such as box documents, you know, that have been in the basement, that are really important? Does that mean I have to wear an astronaut suit and flight clothes to work through them?
That is, the basement, honestly, is being kept separate at this point. When we're making the best effort to try to get the building open as quickly as possible, hopefully by beginning of semester, the basement will not be included in that opening. You will not be the one cleaning the materials, I can guarantee that. You know, I'm sure you're very capable, but it's, no, there are certain procedures that we'll have professionals who do the cleaning all the time, set up the proper decontamination areas, and handle it properly. I'll be honest with you and tell you that not everything can be decontaminated, and that, you know, there will have to be some give and take on the importance and priority of materials. You know, that's just something that we're going to have to look at, and the university will have to look at, and working with you to determine what's necessary and what could possibly not be cleaned.
If I could just add something, it wasn't that we deprioritized the basement for those whose operations are dependent on the basement. It's the nature of the problems that we found in the basement are significantly different than the nature of the problems that we found in, say, the chem lab. And the level of cleaning and work and the number of items in the basement, it's been used, must have been used for a heck of a long time by a lot of departments for a lot of storage. There's a lot of stuff down there. That basement, we have been assured, cannot be brought back into normal operations by the beginning of the semester. So I speak to, we're gonna get the building open, I'm not speaking to the basement.
I understand that, and I appreciate that. My concern is that there are some valuable archives down there, and if they cannot be decontaminated, I'm reading between the lines that then they have to be eliminated somehow. And I would like to know, is there middle grounds? Are there more?
Well, you'll be part of that discussion, actually. I see you as being part of that discussion. That's the part where we need your help. We need your help to help us in one way or another to make it safe for you to be able to help us figure out how to help you, because I'm your risk manager. Those are your archives, and you need those archives. We will figure out how to get you what you need. We're committed to that, totally, but we're going to need your help, definitely.
One of the things that I have become ultra sensitive to is moving the campus in terms of safety to best practices, and that's starting to know what's in buildings, who's doing what, how long have they been stored, who's in, you know, we would not surprise you, have found, you know, that as many universities are, we are vast storage warehouses, and oftentimes we lose track of what we're storing. And it's going to take a significant campus-wide effort, but that's one of the things that, well, this is teaching us, that when you have old buildings, as we do, that we need to know what's in them and what kind of work is being conducted in those spaces. And that's going to take some dialogue and give and take, given what you're raising about artifacts and safety, and can we continue that practice, or do we need to go to a different practice, perhaps a better one?
There are ways to decontaminate a lot of these materials, and you know, it will be essentially, you know, assigned a priority, and your help will determine the priority. So.
That is a hand in the very back.
For those people who have a research space, and have individuals who can only do work in those spaces, it'd be very helpful to know any kind of timeline. I need to tell those folks, don't come to work for the next 3 days, for the next 5 days, for the next 2 weeks. How will the information be provided so that I can let those individuals know what to expect? Because, you know, if clearly it's going to be a week, well, they might as well take a vacation or something. But if it's unknown, and they might be able to come back on Wednesday to start working again, you know, that's a different perspective. So these people really can only do their job when they get access to the building, because that's where our equipment and research is done.
Right now, my understanding is Wednesday is probably they will know more. Is that still sort of the goal?
We expect to start receiving results back on Wednesday. We don't expect we'll have all the results back by then. We do expect to have more information for you by next week. I'm curious, though, and I'd like to speak with you perhaps after this meeting, if you have a moment, about the employees who might as well stay home, because I would hope, this is a big campus with a big heart, and depending on the nature of the employment and all that, I would hope that we would try to mitigate the impact of income loss on our employees. So if you have a moment afterwards, I'd really appreciate, I'm just touching base with you about that, make sure I'm doing everything, campus is doing everything to help you out with regard to impact on those employees.
So I have a question, what kind of plans are there for students who in the next 2 weeks may have questions, concerns about classes, and the kind of business that students often do between now and the first day of class?
Yeah. Nanette is here. Ellen is working on a communication plan as well. As you know, students are moving away from the internet, and so we're trying to think of a variety of different strategies to make sure that not only does information get out to faculty, staff, the scientists, et cetera, but also obviously to students as well. That's why Nanette is here today. It's a very good concern, because I'm learning over the last months that students don't read email nearly like I do. But
I'm sorry, President. It is not the SFSU email. They do read their email.
It's probably email addresses they wouldn't give me. That's a good point. But Nanette's here representing communications, and that has been an intimate part of our discussions. One reason why I wanted Dean Oubre here, College of Business, Dean Axler. I thought I saw Paul is here, maybe not, but we wanted to make sure that we could provide information as quickly and as efficiently and as effectively as we could. I've been around campuses a long time. I was concerned about this morning at 8 o'clock, people showing up, and we've already got the building sealed. We did our best. Wasn't perfect. We'll get better. But as we move forward, that's where we, as Michael was saying, we need to work with you, to know. And we'll do our best, absolutely.
I wanted to ask a related question. You've talked a lot about creating communication channels to faculty members and so on. And, I have a lot of faculty who are concerned about objects, artifacts in their rooms, offices, and so on. And I think that it would be very helpful to me as a chair to know, I was a point person to whom you would communicate, okay, we have these dates, we've gotten these results. The following days will be set up where you can have a 15-minute slot to run into your office and run. That kind of information would start to be very helpful, I'm sure, to all the people. Maybe you go to the chairs first and kind of spread out that way. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, anything that you can do to help us, we would deeply appreciate. It's a good point. It's a good point. Any others?
It sounds like you're waiting on test results, and you mentioned that next week is when you'll know more. I'm wondering if you can set a deadline for us. That is to say, noon, Monday next week, the 20th, we'll receive an email. Something along that line. That would cut down on uncertainty because we'll be waiting for a specific time to receive specific information.
Good point. I wish I could, and I'm going to block for these guys in a moment. We're going to do our best to do that. I can't promise you that. And hard deadlines when you don't have data are really hard to do. As you heard, as soon as I was briefed on Friday in the 2 o'clock in the afternoon, EOC met something like 3:30, 4 o'clock. A decision was called. The testing began Saturday. We are moving very expeditiously because our plan is that we would prefer, obviously, as Plan A, to have the building ready for use on the 27th. I'm one that in situations like this, we're going to do our best. I can't promise you hard dates. I just can't. Yes, ma'am.
You said that the type and extent of contamination in the basement is different from what you found in the above floor. So the mercury vapors that you found in the crawl space and the traps and pipes, is that pretty much basement level, or was mercury found in the higher floors as well?
been mercury found higher levels in the building as well. Pretty much limited to drains, sink drains, some of the chemistry lab drains. Not within the room, but specifically sticking the instrument into the drain, only drawing vapors from there. You remove the instrument 5 feet and you'll get below detection limits. So, we realize that there are some issues with some of the mercury being in the drain pipes. So those will have to be dealt with. We have identified mercury in dust in several rooms. One of the situations is that the artifacts, we believe, were treated with mercury, as well as a couple of other, essentially, insecticides. So, we're trying to, we haven't tested, get back to the gentleman from earlier about the artifacts. We have not touched the artifacts whatsoever. What we've done is tested the surfaces around them to determine essentially what the artifacts could be given off to the room as well as what the room could be given to the artifacts. So, complicated answer to, yes, there have been instances of mercury found in a few areas. That was part of the emphasis on testing the whole building to determine, is it localized with the artifacts? Is it a more widespread problem? And then also to look at the laboratories.
It helps to, the testing of the balance of the building will help them to best try to determine the source. Whether it was a broken piece of equipment in one room, or does it look like it followed the artifacts or any other kind of an item around? We're going to get a lot of information on this testing, and we did the best, most comprehensive testing we thought we could do, and it's going to answer some of these questions. Because it could have just been like a broken gauge or valve or something in the room and just migrated down to the lowest spot in the room. We're about to find out. All of us are going to find out.
Yes, ma'am.
There are a number of us who work for academic offices, department offices in building, history, anthropology, engineering, biology, who may need some flexibility on due dates on, for example, hiring graduate students for our classes. There's a very hard date about when that has to be done, and it's going to be tough. If the building doesn't open, it's going to be very hard to get that done. So we may need some flexibility.
That's an excellent point. Please, I'd like to touch base with you two after the meeting because I would like to make sure that the HR directors and management are supportive of you and your department as possible as you're going through this. It's going to be real, yeah, it would be hard for you to meet the standard deadlines. We really need to give you help here. We will. So I want to connect with you, if that's okay.
Very bad. Yes, sir.
Yeah, engineering has all of its laboratory in the science building, and it doesn't take, it takes much more than a few weeks to set the box, set the marketing annex to some place. Like that, if the building is closed. What contingency plans are in place for that? That's one question. My second question is, I have all the graduate program admission folders sitting in my office that needs to be addressed quickly. Otherwise, it would adversely affect our admission for the semester to come. When can I get access to those folders in order to be able to process them? As a matter of fact, a few of them are coming this coming semester, and they are stuck in consulates and embassies needing letters from me, and the folders are sitting there. So
we'll have to work, obviously, with you and your dean, obviously the team up here, EOC. So stay close to us. Michael will talk to you about that. Again, it's the whole issue of, sort of, I forget the phrase you use, accompanying people in by a schedule so that the people who go in aren't moving potential contaminants. So clearly we'll work with you. And in fact, the whole issue of student transcripts, admissions, and all that stuff was part of our discussion about an issue that we have to confront ASAP. Very back.
This is kind of this might seem simplistic, but mail. Where might we pick up important pieces of mail?
I have to tell you that that's a great question that has not come up.
Because admissions letters or admissions packages will also be coming into department offices supposedly, but I want to know where maybe I can pick that up for faculty.
Actually, Stephen Smith, who is in charge of contracts, procurement, and mail services, has been in contact with the college offices and will be directing mail that would normally be sent to that building to the appropriate college office. So you should be able to have continuity of mail service through that office.
So, yeah, so check our colleges and things.
Please, yes. And if you have any problems, please contact me, let me know.
Sure, thank you.
Good point. That's why we have these meetings.
Okay, doesn't look like we're sort of in that vortex where there's more questions than answers, and all of us are trained to look at data. So the gentlemen, and the teams that are doing that are collecting that. I hope that we can be vigilant and also patient with one another. If there are issues, make sure you get them forward to your chairs. I thought the suggestion of using chairs into the deans, et cetera, is a good way to go. I think many of you know who the EOC members are as well, and you certainly know where my office is as well. So again, when you face these kinds of things, I guess I'm just asking for a little bit more patience as we move forward, in trying to rectify this. So, and we'll hang out some if you have questions and want to come up. Michael has mentioned wanting to chat with a couple of you. So again, thank you for coming, and again, thank you for your patience.